give her start off today with the kudos to her. And only Nancy is so good. If you remember what we got as gifts at our last retreat, which was what the umbrellas. I mean, that's how good she is. She anticipated what we were going to need this time for this retreat. So Nancy, thank you for getting this all set up. First-timers. We have a few first-timers today, which is always cool. This is a sign of the continued organizational growth and the advancement of leadership. So we have a few people in the room today who are with us for the first time. Janelle Dethridge for Janelle is the new clinical manager at the Peoria Glen office, and then we have Ashley Culbertson. Ashley is the new Peoria Payne or Peoria, what are we calling it? Proctor clinical manager. So new office that started on Tuesday, opened on Tuesday. And then we have Deb. Where's Deb? Deb, for a lot of you who met Deb. City area. And then we have Abby in the back, who you met. Abby is from Jess will be joining us later today. Rachel was here last time.
Dang it.
Randy, she's been there too.
Oh, she's in and out. Kind of good.
Anyone else here new? It's somewhat difficult because sometimes as we anticipate, we bring people on before they start their positions. So.
They're a year and a half.
Well, welcome. Again, today's talk, as you saw from the agenda, we have a lot jammed into a very short day today. Some of it, the spring retreat, traditionally it's been more of just kind of operation stuff. What do we all need to communicate in this type of format, and kind of checking things off. And then we usually went and did the Have Life kind of special needs camp, and that's been kind of changed this year. So what we've decided to do as far as our advancement of leadership and the growth of leadership is that each one of these, we want to try to take care of as many operational issues as we can outside of the meetings and use this time for really growth of this group together. And so this morning we are blessed again to have Nicole Klein from Dale Carnegie with us, who will be kind of doing the second half of this. And the first half is going to be myself as well as the Scorecard team kind of setting the stage for what Nicole's going to lead into. So we'll get started and make sure we have plenty of time for Nicole. So always starting with the why. Again, I think our why has become more and more clear as we've gone through things with the work that we do, at our work, with how we treat our coworkers and the people that we take care of, in our good works throughout our community. I think our why has become more and more pervasive and clear. In our communication plan, I think that's, and I put a question mark there because I think that's the part, this is the last part, and that's what we're going to spend a lot of time today. I've thrown this up there, we've called it our balanced scorecard, we called it our strategic plan, but really what its intent is to be the communication plan. It is to be the vehicle that helps all of us understand how our role is so important in the company. And probably more importantly, in talking to you guys here, it's how you communicate that everyone you work alongside, how important their role is. Each of us has a very important role in making all of this happen, okay? And it doesn't happen with just those individuals on the screen. There's a lot of things that lead up to the eventual making better lives, and that's what's become very clear. So from a company standpoint, I want to just communicate kind of where we're at from the company standpoint of how we've done. We've spent 3 years really creating clarity in our vision at the executive level. Today, we want it to be crystal clear to you guys on what it means to you guys and how you guys are impacted. And I know much of this you already know, and again, we're just going to be reiterating, and then we're going to talk about kind of how do we know we're getting there. So when we look at when we look at all the bubbles, I want to just go through just things. So optimize and employee training. This year, we had 99% of our employees went through the training that we intended them to go through. Okay, we are still working on improving the training every year. Okay, Dan and Kyle are going to talk a little bit about that today. But what in the past, we had training, but we didn't even know if people went through it. So that was one of our initiatives. 99%. We had one kind of part-time tech who didn't get through all the training. That was the only thing we were short of. Increasing employee engagement. We did employee engagement survey a couple of years ago. As you know, we ranked very high on that as far as compared to our peers. What we look at also in that, we're looking at another measure, which is employee turnover. There's an APTA study that showed about 10% turnover amongst professionals in the PT arena. In 2016, we were at 8%. When we look at that 8%, over half of that was in our residents and other people coming through. So again, some of that's intentional, turnover, it's projected to be. Again, we'd like to improve the retention rate of that, and we have initiatives to go on for that. But so again, we're getting there is looking at the measures. These numbers I'm talking about, this is how we measure whether we're doing this. It's really easy to have something on the board and say, yeah, we're doing that. But then the question is, show me. And that's what we're going to talk about today when we go down the line with the other things. When we talk about improving managerial capacity, that's why we're sitting here in the room today and why we're bringing Nicole in. When we look at improving managerial capacity, we look at it as two ways. One is we all have to be, we all have to continue to work on being better leaders. And that's what we're going to work on. The second part is we had a measure where we did not want to miss an opportunity because we didn't have the next leader ready to go. Okay? Well, I can say Mike would probably agree with this, and Mike chime in, is we had probably 2 opportunities this last year that we had to turn down because we didn't have the next person ready to go. Okay? Some of it was geography related. Some of it was, well, we just haven't built the bench strength strong enough where we felt like it was a good thing. Okay? For us, opportunities are all about the people. We have to have the right person ready to go to be successful. That's what we've learned through the years. So again, you guys are a big part of that, is how do you look around at the people you work alongside and say, you know what, this is somebody that has to be sitting in this room a year from now or 2 years from now, and how do we help get them there? I'm going to talk a little bit about our Gas Gang 2.0 as a way that we're planning on attacking that initiative. Improving customer acquisition. Again, that's something we've gotten much better at. Dedicated more resources to. Last year we were at about 102% of budget. So again, from a standpoint of new customers coming in the door, we've accomplished our goal with that. Completed courses of care. People that come and start with us and end with us. So that whole, I get introduced to somebody, they come in, I take care of them, they stay for the entire course of care. We shake hands at the end and say, you know what, I'm sorry I couldn't help you. Here's where you need to be, or I'm so glad you're feeling better. I'm glad I can help. Either one of those scenarios is perfectly fine, but my job is to make sure that I engage them in a way that they trust me to be that person. Because next time when they have a problem, even if they didn't get better, they're still going to rely on me. They're going to call up and say, hey, what do I need to do? This is the problem I'm having. That's where we want to be. As Marty said so well, and I think this might be your legacy, Marty, to the whole company, is the term, you have to become relevant in somebody's life. Okay, Marty termed that last year, and I love that term, is how are you relevant in their life? The satisfaction, again, we're not sure, we're not math majors, none of us, and so we set this goal of having 50% of our clinics in the top 16% in our Midwest Therapy Network. Well, I think we may need more people in our Midwest Therapy Network before we can get all 50% of our clinics in the top 16%. But really what we're saying is we want to be top of the league as far as customer service goes. And so we're continuing to look and measure that. Fostering community partnerships, we want to give back. Again, not only because it's our responsibility, but because we believe it's good business. Okay, that the more we're involved in our communities, the more we know what our community needs. Okay, and that's what business does. Is business solves problems for their communities. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to be active and involved in our communities. And with that, we looked and said, Forbes magazine listed the most generous companies being at about 1% of their top line revenue back to their communities. Last year we were at 1.4%. Okay, so again, we're exceeding that expectation, and I think for us as a board, we're investigating that and saying, is that enough? Okay, is that too much? Where are we at with that? Because we really do believe in that community partnership. Decreasing cost. we look at this a couple ways, and this is going to be a big emphasis today, is we look at overall cost per visit is something that's easy, and then we look at also our administrative costs. Okay, so as we grow as an organization, we should see some economies of scale where in the administration we grow, bringing on great people like Abby and Mike over the years. We've been able to do that because our company continues to grow. Our cost per visit as far as our administrative and billing costs, again, thanks to Rachel and Scud and the good work they do as well, continues to come down. Okay? And so we look at that from a labor cost standpoint too, is how do we do that? And again, we saw a drop in both of those numbers last year. Growing revenue, we set a goal to grow by 50%. We wanted to be 50% more revenue in 5 years. We're above target on that. So we're about $300,000 beyond where we were expected to be at the end of last year. So again, that 8%, that's an 8% growth year over year in revenue. So it's 50% can seem daunting, but it's really an 8% growth in revenue year over year. And we're on track with that as well. Increasing stability. So this is one area that we're kind of going backwards on. So what we talked about is we don't want any more than 20% of our eggs in any one basket, meaning we don't want one customer accounting for more than 20% of our business. And so obviously with our ORA relationship and the opportunity to move out to the new office and have further relationships, we're not going to turn those opportunities down. Those are huge. But what that does is that does put us a little bit less diversified. Okay, so what we want to do, so in response to that, what do we have to do is we got to find either more relationships like ORA, or we got to continue to grow in other regions and other markets. So when we look at growth and opportunity, we have about 10 things on the board right now, what we could do. And so that's something that factors in. If everything being equal, then you know what, let's go to this market because that makes us more stable and diversifies us a little bit more. So those are things. And then net income margin, we want 15% net income. We feel like that's stable. That's before profit share and things that we can give away. Last year, we were at 12.4%, so we're not there yet. And again, we certainly know some ways, and we'll talk about those today of how do we get there. So I give you that because that's the big picture. And why are those numbers important? Those numbers are lines in the sand that tell us, I'm here now, I want to be here. We do an initiative, we see how that moves, are we getting closer to what we expect to do? Once we hit those goals, then we look at it and we reassess the goal, okay? Is that where we want to be? Sometimes it's a flat set goal. You know, we want to be here and that's it, we're fine with that. There's other ones where then once we hit that, we change the perspective and we aim higher. So that's our communication plan. We're going to continue to reinforce that. So when I joked about at my State of the Union, you know, everyone has that hanging above their bed at home. You know, I know you look at it before you go to sleep. Again, maybe you don't need to do that, but I would love you guys to have that there and present so that you can review it and say, what am I doing and how does it impact that? And we're going to connect those dots for you today. So how does the story go? What got us here? And why is this strategic plan important? Well, what we do, okay, is we hire great people and we train them intentionally. I optimize employee training. Okay? We introduce them our customers. Okay? We take them and we say, hey, you know what? Here's Joe. He's having back pain. I'd like you to help him. Okay? We do that with everybody that comes into our organization. They spend time addressing that customer's needs and becoming relevant in their life. Again, using one of Marty's terms. Okay? What does spending time look like with them? Time unit per visit. Right? How do we measure? How do we know if they're spending time with them? We have a metric. We have a measure for that. Okay? So how do we know this is happening? Well, people are spending time with their patients. How do we know that's happening? Well, it's a time unit. Again, connecting why the metrics are important. Customers value their service and therefore show up for their meetings. I use that term meeting intentionally there because think about it if we were in a different business and your job was, you know, you had 10 meetings a day that you had to set up with clients, okay, as part of your job. And what if 2 out of those 10 didn't show? What if 2 out of 10 times you didn't show up for a meeting? Okay? Why wouldn't somebody show up for a meeting? What would be some reasons they wouldn't show up for a meeting?
They forgot.
They forgot? Okay.
They don't find value in it.
They don't find value in it? Okay. So I want you to think about that when people don't show up for your meeting with you or your therapist meetings. Did they forget, or did they not find value in it? Okay? What other reasons could there be?
They were seeing patients.
What's that?
They were seeing patients instead
Who was
of
seeing
going to the
patients?
meeting. Whoever was supposed to be at the meeting.
Didn't hear you. Yeah, they were doing their work.
He didn't put it in his blueberry.
What's that? He didn't put it in his blueberry.
Some have blackberries, some have blueberries.
Nobody even has blackberries anymore.
They're making a comeback.
Again, what happens then when they show up for the meetings? Those people go out and rave about the value of that, right? And so they send their friends and family. What's that called? What do we call that when somebody sends their friends and family to us? Self-directed, direct access. Does that sound familiar? Okay. Okay. Or professionals build a practice within a practice, and they have to expand to meet their demand. Okay. I bring this back and I tell the story a little tongue-in-cheek because this is how Rock Valley was started. Okay. Eventually, Steve and Mark had too many patients for them to see because their patients told other patients, their doctors that got great service sent more people. Suddenly they couldn't see all those people, so they hired the next professional to come in and build their practice. Not unlike a junior law partner gets brought into a law practice when the attorney gets too busy, not unlike an accountant that builds their practice. All the other professionals that we put ourselves on the same standard with, or as a profession, want to be considered in the same light as them, not a measly PT as Amy kind of referred to, somebody kind of tongue-in-cheek told her this week. That's what our professional practice is. That's what that's what makes Rock Valley different than other practices. And so again, the idea here is the communication. How do we continue to communicate that mission? How do we measure that mission? How do we go? So again, not sure you heard me. How do we know this is happening? Okay? We know it through the metrics that we measure. If people are spending time with patients, we have them scheduled for 40-minute meetings with their patients. Okay? If they're spending the 40 minutes with the meetings, the way our billing rules are, that should be at least 3 time codes. Okay? If not more, given the payer. Okay? What should happen? People should be showing up for those meetings. They should find value in it. So the arrival rate should be 90%. We have a self-directed rate of 50%. That's one of those metrics. Okay? I'm not sure that, again, unless payment changes, the time unit thing, we're not looking at driving that thing to 6. Okay? But that self-directed referral rate, I will tell you, working along guys like Greg Blasky, referral rate, self-directed referral rate, anybody know what it might be?
110%.
I'd say 150% maybe. Okay? Again, that's the senior law partner, right? That's Steve and Mark starting to practice. I got more than 100%. I can't see them anymore. I need to bring somebody in alongside me, train them, and have them see what's left over. That's what happened in Des Moines. Okay? Bring on Dave, too busy. Bring on Marty. The only bad hiring factor in Des Moines was we brought on Marty. Marty already had over 100% self-directed referral rate. So it looked brilliant on the end, but really didn't help Dave's capacity issue anymore. So then fortunately, Steph was moving back from Colorado at the time. So it all worked out. But that's the model that works. And what happens then? The reward of good work is more work. Okay? So what happens is you get busy. And busy for us is that you're seeing about 10.5 patients a day. You got an hour to do your paperwork. You got an hour for lunch, and you got an hour to do your paperwork and all the phone calls and everything else. And you get to do a great job with patients every 40 minutes, and you go home at the end of the day feeling like you made a difference in people's lives. That's what it looks like. Eric?
Yep.
So Eric's going to talk about Are We There Yet?
Yep. Nope.
There you go, he's finished.
Good cop, bad cop. I'm out of here.
So I was actually seriously just thinking about this and the only thing that makes me nervous today about talking, and I'm fine with all this stuff, but I look over and I see Nicole writing copious notes of things that are said.
You've already got a whole page.
All right, and she was able to take these little names of my strengths and peg me to a T. So now she's actually going to be able to see it in action and compare or contrast Mike and myself. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this. That's when Mike's talking.
You sure it's like a grocery list or something?
Oh, actually, yeah, I did like a
to-do list for later. So, all right, so I'm going to go through kind of a little bit of kind of where we're at, go through kind of along the way to where we're at with the scorecard process, okay? We've been talking about it for a long time, and I can tell you that we've had a lot of discussion, a lot of argument, a lot of going back and forth on what exactly that scorecard should look like. What factors can you drive your business with, okay? What do you need to know? But at the end, we want to try to make it simple, okay? So that you don't have to think about 15 different measures that you're trying to accomplish in a clinic. What are the things that you have to do well in order to be successful and thrive in your practice? So just going through these, and then we're going to get to some new concepts that you guys haven't seen yet to this point. So I want this to be open dialogue, asking questions, but just right now, looking at the time codes, if we're on target as a company, we're at 3.01 per year to date, okay? So yes, we are spending the 40 minutes, right? Now I can say that within your clinics, though, there's still potential opportunity for improvement, right? And that's where you as a manager, I or the regional managers are not going to dig down into each individual person and look specifically. So average could look good, but you guys have to look within your clinics to identify opportunities for improvement, okay? Give you one example. In Des Moines, and I've spent probably more time in the last couple months with many of you kind of going through some of the reports and how you look at it, especially if there's some deviations. But in Des Moines, we dove down into a therapist that the time codes looked okay. But when we dove down, we got into Medicare, and their Medicare billing was significantly less than kind of what the practice average was, which amounted on a per visit basis was about an $8 difference in revenue per visit because of how that therapist was billing Medicare, okay? Billing really, really good on the Walmart, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, right? So their average looked good, but on just purely Medicare, it was low. So those are questions that, that as we continue to go through, that you guys have access to data. You guys can pull this stuff up. If you need help, talking to the regional managers or myself of how to dive down and to look at those kinds of things, okay? And in that particular example, that therapist, I guarantee that they would say that was just an error because they're not treating Medicare patients any differently than they're treating anybody else. It didn't reflect the 40 minutes of time that they're spending. So, so this number, is where we're at year to date. We're going to continue to look at that number. Arrival rate. So as you know, we've switched this from cancellation no-show rate to an arrival rate. It kind of flips it to more the optimistic side of how many people are arriving versus how many people are choosing not to come see us. So as a company, year to date, we're at 88.7%. Okay? So we are not at our target of 90% arrival rate. Okay? Just a little kind of an impact of what is 1.3% below our target mean. So year to date, if we were at 90% arrival rate, instead of being at 97.6% of year-to-date visits, we'd be at 99% year-to-date visits, okay? And on an annual basis, and Mike's going to share later some big numbers that he sits in his office and he loves to crunch numbers. And Randy and I sometimes wonder where those numbers come from, but we let him do his thing. But if that difference is either a revenue we lost, or you can look at it as it's a difference of $326,000 to this company on an annual basis. Okay? So that's a big number. 90%, where do we pull that from? It's just a target, right? Okay. It's kind of like our quality and some of the measures that we're going to look at. Okay, here's where we're currently at, right? We've talked to most of you about kind of our CQI and looking at our quality, okay? We're looking at our practice and many measures across the continuum and using what's called a Z-score to determine, where a clinic's at. So the goal with a continuous CQI, or just continuous quality improvement, with any metric that we have, the goal is to have less variation, bring everybody to the middle, okay? Then to take that middle and move it forward, right? So completed cases, bring everybody, if we bring the bottom up, we might get up to 65 or 70%, for example. But now we got to keep working to get everything going up 75%, 80%. Same thing with the arrival rate, okay? I would challenge that if we have really good process from a front office of how they look at the schedule, identify a no-show, follow up with that phone call, and they're engaged in that process to get them back in the schedule, we can get better than 90%, okay? So you can only imagine if 1.3% is 326,000, Monster, what's 2.6%?
That's a lot more.
So just looking at that impact, okay? So, and we've got some things, some tools here to help with that. Self-directed rate. Mike, I don't know if you want to say anything about this. Year to date, we're at 28%. April was 42%. I think we recognize, and Rachel would recognize, that we still have some variation in how our front office is tracking this, of making sure that that alternate referral source is used effectively. Okay, so I think that number is going to continue to improve, and I think Osler would say the same thing, is that we've set a target for 50%, but I would say that that's just like the arrival rate or anything else, there's room to take that up much higher than that. Anything you want to say to that?
No, absolutely. I think probably can't say that enough. What Mike said, he just said that the limit is not 100%. I mean, it would be great if you're in a last situation and you got people coming in and saying, hey, I can't see it, but here's this person in our clinic who's fantastic. I think I'll give a shout out to Steph Kelsick because she was the person in Polk City. And I think over the last year, she adapted to how do I bring a younger therapist along with me that when people are asking for me, I know I can't see all of them. How do I build up this other person? So her self-directed rate can be 150%, and she's got a young therapist who's building a practice in Polk City. So kudos to Steph for that, wherever she is. Nice work.
All right, and then looking at clinical productivity. So this, in the past we look at visits per FTE. It's a confusing number. It doesn't always match with the month because it'd be based upon days in the month. So a metric that is being used at the peer-to-peer network, and that what we're going to adopt is a visit per clinical hour. Okay, so. And we are going to, I'll show you the I'll show you the definition. We're going to start tracking this as of June 1 a little differently. Okay. So we want to know, in scheduled patient care hours, how many visits did our staff have? Okay. So if we look at this, we all sat in this room at one or two, that was last fall at the manager's retreat, and agreed that 10.5 visits per day is a reasonable goal for a level 2 and senior staff therapist. Right? Anybody disagree with that? Okay, with that average, all right? So to look at that, if you take 10.5 and divide it by 8, that comes up to 1.31 visits per clinical hour. Okay. So that's how we're gonna define our productivity in a measure going forward. Okay. We can look at that from, the next steps would also be to identify what is a our level 1 therapist, their productivity standard is a caseload that facilitates learning, but we also know what their average is over that course of that first year. So we can come up with a blend of what that clinical productivity should be. PTAs, we also need to factor that in. Okay, we have some really good PTAs, but we don't always utilize them as much as we can. Okay, and if we're not, why? Okay, so that's what we're going to look at. I'll define the clinical hour definition when I get to the tool. So that's a metric we're going to go to on this. Any questions on that? So here's the scorecard. Is it subject to change? It's not the final stamp yet, is it? Everything's subject to change. But here's what we're looking at, okay? So on the clinical scorecard, and I'll go through this because it's not the easiest thing to see. Does it show up on there? All right, so the clinical scorecard on a monthly basis. Okay? New patients to budget. Visits to budget. Time procedures per visit. Arrival rate. And a clinical productivity measure. Okay? So things that you don't see on there, right? You don't see visits per eval. Okay? Lots of discussion on that. We will continue to track visits per eval because that is a crucial metric in budgeting, right? But it's just another number that really doesn't really mean a lot to you in terms of how you manage your clinic. Probably not, right? Because you're going to be looking at, if you're at your new patients to budget, your business budget, you're at 100%, your business per eval is fine, don't worry about it. right? So it's another number that muddies the water, okay? You'll see that we don't have procedures per visit, okay, on that scorecard, right? We will still look at that. It'll be a measure that we'll have that we can pull out. But again, we're looking at time codes. That's the direct reflection of your interventions and the time you spend with the patient is your time codes, okay? So we're looking at that number, right? Arrival rate, and then the clinical productivity, okay? So that matrix we feel is a simplistic matrix that gives you the key components of how you would manage your business, okay? So that's clinical scorecard. On a quarterly basis, that's when we're going to pull in some of the quality data. So we got completed cases, self-directed referrals, net promoter score, and then we're developing measures for leadership development and fostering community partnerships, okay? One of the things that you don't currently see on there is MCID, and I think, to be honest with you, we're still not quite 100% sure how good that measure is or what it means to our practice as a percent MCID. And again, we're not great at statistics, but a lot of times there just seems to be variation. Now, we may look at that on the back end and look at identifying some, kind of some of the clinics that maybe are not performing as well and see if there's some common threads there and still work on that on the back end. But it's not going to go onto the clinical scorecard at this point. Okay? Therapist level scorecard. On a monthly basis, it's a productivity measure of your visits per clinical hour, your time procedures, and your arrival rate. Okay? And then on quarterly, we're looking at the same measures as the clinic. We'll be able to cascade that down to the individual level. Okay? So at the therapist level. Randy and Scott are working on the billing office scorecard. Okay? Rachel's working on a front office scorecard. All right? Well, more of that. Right now, one of the things that we're trialing is a conversion rate. I'll speak to the front office. I don't know all the billing office metrics, but a front office conversion rate. Okay, we have 2 clinics that are currently trialing using the conversion rate with the idea that every referral that we get has a case created and is tracked in RevFlow. Okay, then we can look at how many were scheduled, right? And we'll be looking at best practice for that exact same thing. Okay, so if 43rd is at 93% conversion rate, and another clinic's at 67% conversion rate, okay, is that a front office, measure?
Define that metric.
Conversion rate? The number that are cases created divided by, or the number of patients that have an additional appointment scheduled by the number of cases that are created and
Arrived, right, or scheduled?
I think it's scheduled, doesn't it?
Arrive.
Is it right?
So it's referrals you receive. How many referrals did you come into your clinic? How many do you get in for that first appointment? Okay, we've had clinics where we found out that front office got behind and suddenly it wasn't becoming a priority, and they found a drawer full of referrals. Okay, I mean, do you guys know in your clinics that that's not happening? Those are the kind of things that we want to make sure we have processes in place, and then again find out which front office people are really good at